We have Lady Love, and I will join Lady Love. They, them, God is love. The whole point of Christianity is that God is love and to love one another. Atheists are the biggest believers. How do you explain the observer effect? I don't know, Lady Love, if that is what you wanted to talk about. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Excellent. You're a little bit quiet, so if you could get close to your mic, that would be great.
Is this better?
That is better. Thank you so much. Tell us a little bit more about this God being love, and how do you know?
Well, I would say that okay, I would say that I know from personal experience. I would also say that I know from watching other people experience showing God's love, um, like receiving God's love and giving God's love. I was raised in a very loving household. It was a Christian household. I actually had a nice little chat with your screener, and they were telling me that they were an atheist since they were 13 years old. And it was actually around that same age when I sort of like abandoned my faith because I had friends that were Jewish, I had friends that were Catholic. I don't remember, and like one of my friends, like they didn't believe in anything, and I just couldn't understand how like my faith would say, "Oh, they're gonna burn in hell," because they don't believe the same things that I believed. I felt it just didn't make sense because overall we agreed with one another, we got along with one another, we loved one another. So I was like, you know what? I can't really rock with Christianity anymore. But so then it's like, I'm 13, you get into things. I had my, wild times in college. And I would say that sinning was one of the hardest things, I guess, to rationalize, or like I didn't want to be a Christian because I didn't want to deal with hell, I guess. Like if I want to do things with my man, like I'm gonna like burn in hell. Like I couldn't agree with that logic because I felt like being with people and just, sharing space and caring about one another, like no matter what form it took, like I didn't see why um it would land you in hell. It wasn't actually until recently I've been following Brady's page, like as an atheist or believing myself to be an atheist because I was doing a lot of things, and so I just didn't accept the faith. But hearing people come on the shows and I guess a lot, well, some atheists, like the way they speak, it just I guess sort of turned me off to disbelief because one of my biggest things is like nobody knows. Like we don't know if God is real or not. So atheists being on the side where they're saying God is not real, that's a belief because you don't know. And then Christians and all other religions being on the side where they're like, God is real and you should worship God in this way and you should do these rituals. I think that's just as like, they don't know. But I think that the Christian Bible does a really good job, whether you follow it as a story or you truly believe it. If you read the word for yourself, the whole theme or conclusion is that you're supposed to treat people with respect, love thy neighbor, and God is love. And I don't see how people miss that, or I don't see how that could be such a detrimental thing. I think the religiosity or like the everybody trying to hold each other to certain rules and rituals, that's a problem. You see how many sections they've broken off into. Even Catholics supposed to be a version of Christians, and I don't know, Orthodox, and they're the real ones, and all that stuff. I don't think it matters because at the end of the day, as human beings, which even the Christian Bible says, like whether you're a Jew or a Gentile, so like the chosen people or not, anybody who wants to believe that they should just love can, have that love and have that peace and enjoy a good life because of it.
Lady Love, did you know that verse continues on? It doesn't matter whether you're Jew or Greek, slave or free, male or female. That God basically didn't was okay with all of the was okay with all those disharmonies. That passage is actually more about saying, if you're in a terrible plight, don't try and get out of that terrible plight. You should just stay there
That's not what it's
and love
about.
people.
I mean, back in the day, there were slaves. If you look at America, what? Slavery stopped. The last slaves were free in 1967, maybe even later than that. There's some people that were still being kept on plantations or whatnot. The whole point was no matter who you are, you can love and you can have the freedom and peace that loving thy neighbor as thyself can bring
But
and
loving thy
caring
neighbor as
about your fellow
yourself,
man.
I agree
Yes,
that
that's the
if you
problem.
want,
It's very
well,
subjective.
no, but no. Actually, I wasn't going to go there. I'm saying the golden rule, as it were. And there's platinum rules, and there's various versions of it. Loving your neighbor as yourself is not a Christian or biblical idea per se. It predates the Bible by a long time in written form, and probably, tens of thousands of years before that, basically having empathy for each other. So, um, I'm a little bit curious. So it doesn't. You said you're a theist. So do you believe in a God, or do you just believe in the golden rule?
No, I believe that God is love. I believe that there's forces that we cannot see that are between us and amongst us, and that you can choose either the positive or the negative of those forces. You can choose to be like a servant and help others, or you can choose to just be selfish and only help yourself.
Can I ask a clarifying question here?
Yeah, Brady, take it over.
I just want to, Lady Love, would you recognize, or would you say that there's a difference between these two statements? God is love being one, and the other being love is God. Do you see a difference between those two?
I would say that I ponder that for myself. I think it's very interesting that to this day, man has not pinpoint down a definition of love, and man hasn't been able to decide if God is real or not. So, if they were synonymous and you could say the inverse, I don't think there would be a problem with that.
I do in this sense. To say God is love is to acknowledge that God or gods are real, and that those gods are manifested as love. To say love is God
No.
is to say love is a real thing, and you sort of elevate love to the level of what other people are calling God. That's how I would separate those two. And it seems like the way you're talking about love is you elevate that connection between people. You elevate, like you said, those acts of service and all that. You're elevating love to the status of what others have called God. I don't know that so far you've identified this being or entity that you call God that you're willing to say, and that thing is also love.
You lost me because I didn't say anything about multiple gods. Because I definitely believe that
No,
there's only one true, the Most High God. Because there are little Elohim, well, little g gods, because it's like every single human, I guess, like thing that you could do is connected to a spirit. That is also in the Bible. I don't really get into the weeds of all of that because a lot of people don't read or know enough to understand those concepts. But I don't think that they need to believe in love and to believe in God being love and to believe that they should be a loving person and treat other people with respect. Which
and do you
really,
need God
like,
for that?
getting to the point of why I feel like the Christian doctrine, although being borrowed or copying, I guess, off of earlier, text and whatnot. I don't remember what his name is. I'm sorry, but like the line guy said, but that is the point where it's like Christianity, it's like each person in each generation experiences God for themselves. And I think that's what like a lot of atheists like miss because I don't think that a lot of atheists have really tried God. I think that their whole thing is that they don't want to try God because they don't believe in God. But if you try believing in God and you put your faith in God and you test and you walk in faith and do whatever rituals you believe to get you closer to a God that you sincerely believe in, you're going to see God show up. So it's like, how could you tell people what they're experiencing is not real when we don't know?
But you're aware that both of us for decades were Christians, right?
Oh, I've been watching Brady stuff. He never even tithed. So,
He never even
I mean,
tithed.
if he believed that his religion called for him to tithe, and then he didn't do the things, then it's like you didn't fully submit. So by definition, you never allowed yourself to fully
So
submit to your
so
faith. So you could never have that
if that's
connection
the
with
litmus
God.
test, which is weird because I've sat in sermons where tithing is absolutely
That's not the litmus test itself. The full
but
faith is
I
the litmus
tithed.
test.
I tithed. What other litmus tests do we have?
Well, I guess you would have to talk more about what your walk was like. And considering that you were a part of a group that excluded a lot of people, that wouldn't be love.
Do you think that God is? Do you think that God of the Bible is an inclusive God? What do you think the point of the Old Testament
Yeah.
was and the point of Israel was?
Well, I think the Old Testament is an Old Testament for a reason because just like we're images of God and we evolve, I don't believe that the Bible is the true and full word like it says. If you know, like about higher spirituality, there's an order of confusion because of free will. So you can't say everything perfectly or right out. There's always going to be tricks in there so that people who do not have discernment can be deceived. And, you know, they choose
How do
to
you
go
know?
with
Yeah, how do you know?
because I've experienced God for myself.
Have you do people experience things that they attribute to something that it isn't actually? Do people misattribute
Well,
sometimes their experiences?
I think people can attribute their experiences to whatever they want, but we do live in a world where we can prove prove with science that things are going on that we cannot perceive, you know, with our eyes, with our ears, with our senses, and our capabilities, which means that there has to be something outside of, I guess, like the human level of material realm going on. That's why I
What's
put
an
in my
example? What's
call
an
log.
example of what's an example of one of those things?
Well, are you familiar with the double-slit experiment and the observer effect? How
Yes.
molecules act based on like whether being
Yeah.
observed or not, like they're either a wave or they go through like straight. So it's things like that. But also just personally, I live in a household where my sister was born of liver disease, and people who have liver disease and get a transplant, they're supposed to be on medication like to keep, you know, the foreign organ in their body forever. But my mom, in her faith, she decided, which, trust me, listening to this story, I'm always like, yo, you're crazy. Like, because what if she would have died? But she stopped giving her the medicine and she's like, I'm going to raise her as a well child. And that's like only a year after her surgery. And even doctors, they said it doesn't make sense. Like, my sister's one of those babies that like died on the table, came back. And I've heard even Brady speak about this before. And like, I do believe in like, I guess like a purgatory or like there's like not fully going into the afterlife. But if your heart stops beating, all that other stuff, if your soul can leave your
But
body or whatever essence can leave your body and come
sorry,
back, people
you're
talk
moving
about
to a lot
that.
of topics, and I just want to make sure we hit all of them. So before we jump off
Well,
too
wait,
much,
just let
you
me
have the
finish with the testimony. So she got taken off of the medication, and even her life expectancy, she still lives to this day. She doesn't take any medication to have a foreign
right.
liver in her body. She had a child, which she wasn't supposed to be able to do. And all of that is like based on what man can see and what man
Is
can
that the
know.
first?
I was
Is that
also
the very first
diagnosed with
time?
metaphysics. Huh?
So I mean, I had cancer, and I saw lots of things like this as well. So has anyone in human history, other
Well, cancer is
than your
actually a
mom,
spiritual disease itself.
ha,
No, me, myself,
has
too. I was
anyone other
supposed to
than
be a
your
doer.
mom? No, you're telling us that there are things in this world that must require a supernatural to be explained, and I want to find out how you came to the conclusion that it must be supernatural to explain it. When there are lots of people who go into remission, there are lots of people who get misdiagnosed, and having spent a lot of time, several years in the hospital, a lot of almost full time, talking to doctors and nurses, they absolutely will play along with people who think that it's miracles. I've talked to them about this. They actually have a hospital policy that if someone thinks it's a miracle, they play along with it because it helps the healing process. So they will absolutely affirm, oh yeah, this is miraculous. We've never seen it, because what they have in mind is the patient's well-being, including their mental well-being. So testimony
Those are
from
the people that you
secondhand.
talk to. How do you know that that's every doctor everywhere that's
I'm
ever
not. I don't. I
experienced and
don't.
seen
I
that?
absolutely don't.
But
But I
that's what
know
I'm
that it's
saying is like we
possible.
could get into the weeds all day, but you can't
No,
tell me
but
that
no, but
God's not real.
you told me what you told me was there are things that cannot be explained without supernatural, and I just was
I didn't say
pointing
that.
out.
You summarized it that way. I said that I've
Okay, so
experienced God for myself, and that was just one
no,
example.
and when I asked you if you could misattribute things, you said like the slit experiment was an example of something that required supernatural to explain. When of course there are scientists who
I
absolutely.
didn't say it requires supernatural to explain.
So
I
then
said
tell me where
clearly
this.
something goes on outside of what human beings can perceive,
Right. And in saying that
meaning
there are
that
things that
there's
go on
something
outside of
other
what,
than the material plane, which they're also
how do you,
working on proving.
well, I think one of the things, and I'm sorry, I sort of fell back a little bit because I do know this caller and I wanted her to hear it from somebody
Oh,
else and not just hear it from
all
me.
right.
Um, but when you say that there are things that we cannot perceive, whether it be with the human eye, we do have instrumentation that we can magnify things and it helps us to see things that the human eye can't. But just because the human eye cannot see the wave function or can't see, and we need special tools to be able to see these things, none of that means it's something spiritual. There are parts of the material world that we just are not. There are light spectrums
Mm-hmm.
that we can't see with the human eye. That doesn't make those light spectrums spiritual. So not being able to detect them with our five senses does not automatically put it in the spiritual category. Would you agree with that?
But who's putting it in the spiritual category? It's like
It
what
seemed
I'm
like you were.
seeing or hearing a lot is that you guys are like using language that I didn't use and trying to summarize things or bring it to points that you guys are comfortable with. This is what you guys as atheists do a lot. But even from the
Mm-mm.
beginning, I said that God is love and I've experienced God for myself. If you guys haven't experienced God for yourself, that's fine. I mean, it's clear that you haven't,
But the
but
question, Lady Love, the question that we're trying to get to is how do you know that what you experienced is God? Just like you talked about the things that we can't perceive with our five senses that are still real, and you were willing to say that's evidence that there must be a spiritual realm. And we're saying to you that's not necessarily, probably not even the best explanation for what you're talking about. How do you know that what you're saying you've experienced God was actually God? Can you explain that in a way that would make me or Paul say, damn, you know what? That actually might be God, other than because right now all we're saying is that could be any number of things that you're talking about. The things you've experienced between people where you felt
my
love
whole
and you
point
saw the
is
display
that
of love.
if you choose to believe, then
Mm-hmm.
you choose to believe. But you guys are saying that you for sure know that there isn't a God. And I think
Neither of
it's
us said
your
that.
burden of
No,
proof.
neither of us said that.
Yes, you
No,
are.
we
As
did not say that.
atheists, that's what you
You-
claim, or
You're,
is it
you're,
not?
you just complained
No,
about using words that we didn't use. That's not what we
right,
believe. Neither of us. We had a
right.
Okay, so
conversation just before you
neither
came
of you are
on.
atheists? No, let's
We
clarify. Neither of you are atheists.
we call ourselves atheists with a different definition than the one that apparently you want to force
So
upon us.
please,
So
I
if
know,
you
I
if
need you
we
guys to explain what it means then for you guys to be atheists.
uh, for us, I have no evidence to believe. I am not convinced that any God exists.
Yeah, I lack a belief in the existence of a God. I'm not convinced. I can't tell you that I know no God exists. A God might exist. I have no reason to believe that. I am atheist. I am without a belief in God. Atheist.
Non-theist might be a better word in its own way, but
Okay, but
Yeah.
by saying that you do not believing in existence of God, then you're saying that your belief is that there is no existence of
No,
God.
no. If I held up a jar and there was a number of jelly beans in it, and I said, are there an odd number of jelly beans in this jar? And you say, I don't know. And I said, aha, you're saying there's an even number of jelly beans in the jar. You would say, no, I'm just saying I don't have enough information to know if there's odd number
Now you're
or an even
creating an
number.
analogy. Now you're creating an analogy to try to make it seem, but it's not the same thing at all.
Of course, it's the same thing. We are not. You
If you're a person who
complained
does
earlier
not
that we were
believe
putting
in the
words in your mouth.
existence of God, you said you don't have any evidence to believe in the existence of God.
Do not have sufficient.
Right?
We are not convinced. That's not what we said. We said we are not convinced that there is a God.
But
now, we'll go a step further. This may help your case,
other
Lady
people
Love.
to believe in God, because I said that I've experienced God for myself, and I know and believe
Right.
that God is love. I don't have to convince you of it, but you didn't even let me get through my proof. You just started attacking my arguments. You didn't even let me finish.
Well, I mean, this is a call-in
this is
show.
what you
There's a
guys
back and
do.
forth.
This is a dialogue show. It's not a preach show.
Right.
I didn't say it was a preach show, but it's like you said to give
Lady
you
Love,
evidence, and I never got through my evidence.
Can I help you understand what this dialogue actually is, though? Because this is not we can tell you that there's no God. You call us and you tell us that there is. This is we don't think that the evidence that has ever been presented for a God raises to the standard of that warrants belief. And we question what other people put forward as, no. See, I got proof because of this. And we hear it and we say, well, really, if that's what you're saying is the proof of God, and then we can explain these things in a number of other ways. All we're saying is the thing that you're putting forth as proof of a God or evidence or enough reason for you to believe, does that really warrant the faith that you're giving it? I question that. So far, and if you say we haven't let you finish, then maybe that's your response to this. But so far, you haven't put forth anything that makes me say, now I got to consider that, because, man, I don't know how else to explain that. And that's sort of what we're looking for.
But he said that the way that he even explains somebody being supernaturally healed is just that doctors agree with them that if they got supernaturally healed, they just saying, yeah, you got supernaturally healed.
That's not what I said.
Doesn't mean that
I said
it wasn't supernaturally healing. You said that's what happens. If people believe that they got supernaturally healed, then doctors just agree with them.
Yes, that's right. If they believe they got supernaturally healed, not if they actually got supernaturally healed, because that is the question we are asking you. That's what I'm saying.
Where's your proof that they weren't supernaturally healed?
I have no. That's where the burden on someone who says the burden on someone who said that they're supernaturally healed would absolutely be on what is the evidence that they're supernaturally healed.
Explains why they are healed proves that it's supernatural.
How does that
prove
prove
if you could
that it's
explain it by any other means, then you would be able to do so.
So, Lady Love, you go ahead, Paul. Let me just
I didn't expect you guys to be able to,
You do it,
I didn't expect you guys to be able to answer for what I had to say, but I know that's what you guys atheists. I've been watching these shows for a minute. You guys bring it back to things that you can argue, but you can't argue against the existence of God.
Lady Love,
you just said that you don't have enough proof.
Lady Love, do you know that throughout human history, there have been all kinds of phenomena that people had no explanation for at the time? And so God became explanation for those things.
People keep going back to God. Wow, he really must exist.
Lady Love,
and I don't think God is a he either.
Lady Love, can you let me finish my point? My point was this.
What's your point, Brady?
I'm trying to get to it. Throughout human history, there have been all kinds of phenomena that they had no explanation for at the time. And so God was the gap filler at the time. But throughout time, as time goes on, we realize,
they haven't explained everything that they didn't have explanation for. Don't talk like that's true. But that is what you're saying. If you're saying that, then that's what you're saying.
Lady Love.
There's been things throughout history that they could not explain, that they later found explanation for. Have they found explanation for every single thing?
Lady Love, I'm going to mute you just for a second, because I'm going to let Brady finish his point, and then I promise I will unmute you and let you respond. But this needs to be dialogue, and You complained that we didn't let you finish. I'm going to let Brady finish, and then I will unmute you and let you have your say.
All I was trying to say is, as we advanced as a society, as a species, we've learned more about ourselves, more about our world, and the things that we used to use a God to explain, we no longer do. And what happens in those cases is where God used to be up close and personal because he's the one who made it rain. He's the one who made species of animals. He's the one who, whatever it was God. When we found out the naturalistic explanations for those things, God had to recede further to the background. And it might very well be, that the things that you're talking about as this is proof of God, we do know what causes this, or we do know what was the reason why this person no longer needed them. We might know those things, but even if we don't, my money is on give us time, because having had time, look at how far we've gotten. Give us more time and see what happens. I would wager that the God that we're willing to say is he's the or it, since you don't like the he, this God is the explanation for love, is the explanation for miraculous healings, is the explanation for fill in the blank. I think we're going to fill in the blanks that used to have God in it with more explanations, more naturalistic explanations. And these are some terms to look up sometime, not now. What I'm talking about is not philosophical naturalism. I'm talking about methodological naturalism, but that leads to advancement in human life. Take some time to look that up one day and see if you can understand what I mean by philosophical naturalism versus methodological naturalism. You're inputting God in places that we, for the most part, I don't think we need to do that. And I think you're fighting for something that I understand it means a lot to you. It meant a lot to me at one time. I would be one of the callers calling into this show, trying to tell people you need to give God a chance. But like Paul said, both of us have given God a chance. And I don't know, Paul, maybe you would speak to this, still willing to give God
Absolutely.
a chance, which is why we're here on the line. We're asking, maybe God can speak through you. But if we have questions about what you're saying, this is not us not giving God a chance. This is us saying this is not convincing. And that's it.
All right. Over thousands of years, hundreds and thousands of supernatural explanations have been discovered to be natural. There's not a single natural explanation that we eventually found out was actually supernatural. It never goes in that direction. But Lady Love, I'm going to now unmute you and let you respond to what Brady said.
Well, I don't know about the terms, but I came on here saying that God is love. Do either of you guys love anyone?
I absolutely do. We both love people, and
Do you
love
believe
is
in God?
a feeling. That do you think that
Mm.
only people who believe in
Is it
God?
just a feeling? Do you accept love only as a feeling? Or is it deeper than that?
I accept it as a feeling.
Mm.
And or it can mean people
Well,
have
if
slushy
somebody-
definitions. It can mean commitment. It can mean
Right.
various things, but they all surround around empathy. They all are basically various flavors of empathy and being committed and or feeling a certain way positively towards people or animals.
I'm not sure I would even say empathy, but you guys just, I don't know. You said it's not a preaching show, but then you went off on your same old atheist spins. I know God is love, and I experience God for myself.
But do
And,
you think that God is needed for love? Can people experience love absent God?
I believe that when people experience love, they're experiencing God. So no,
This is why I made the comment about
love absent
love
God.
being God.
So you've just basically equated the two things so that there's no difference. Is that am I sorry, I don't mean, I shouldn't say you did. I'm asking if
I
you did.
didn't equate the thing that it's no different. Life itself shows you. I mean,
so I'm supposed to intuit.
If you look at evolution, if you look at human existence, even you guys want to talk about things we can't explain or Now we have, I guess, explanations based on natural whatever. Nobody can tell us to this day why we're here, what we're doing here, or where we should go from here.
What if there are no
But
answers to those questions? What if there are no answers to those questions, Lady Love? Why should I
think
even
the
think that there
answer
are answers to those
is to
questions?
love one another. I think that when we divisively all want to believe in different things other than just caring about the people who are here on this earth, human to human, that's when we get to this problem where people don't see God because they don't see love, because they're not caring about one another, because they're too busy having their rituals and rules and prerequisites. To me, it's that simple, but you guys, I don't know. I don't know what y'all do as atheists.
Well,
Yeah.
I guess I see no reason to equate the feeling of love, which is a biological
not a
response to
feeling.
being a social experience. Well, then tell me what love is, because clearly you're not. If we are not using the same word in the same way, then you could
Love
never
is
convince me
service.
that God is love, right?
Love is sacrifice, which is why the Bible ends up doing that whole big story, whether it's true or not, of ultimate sacrifice. And Jesus, the ultimate example, spends his life in service, feeding,
Right.
healing.
So
That's
you're aware
love.
that you've talked about evolution a bit, which makes me think you kind of maybe accept it. You're aware that humans are social species and that the survival advantage of social species is sacrifice to maintain the species. Like we want sacrifice for your
Where 2 or 3
children,
are
your
gathered.
sacrifice for your tribe. What's that?
Where 2 or 3 are gathered. There I am.
Where 2 or 3 are gathered, my name, there I am with you. That's just a Bible verse that I happen to know off the top of my head as well.
There's no love when there's just one person.
That's so, I was just trying to explain how evolution talks about social species, and our strength as a humanity is not that we're fastest, it's not that we're the strongest, it's not any of those things, it's that we cooperate to solve problems. And so
Because of
everything
love
you've talked
being an
about,
innate feature of the creation of God, because God is
it's
love.
not an innate feature. We actually had to evolve it, and we can see that in the evolutionary record.
I would disagree, because a single-celled organism split.
But single-celled organisms are not social species.
For it to evolve. That's how everything began. Do y'all believe in the evolution theory or not? Like a science?
But I'm just saying you're attributing this.
It all started with a single-celled organism.
You're attributing things that are very explainable by biology.
Because love requires more than one.
You're explaining things that are incredibly simply explained by physical mechanisms and ascribing to them this notion of God. You're labeling them as God. You're telling me and Brady that we're being silly for not attributing them to God. We ask you why you should, and then you slide on to the next thing. So I guess maybe you weren't, I don't know if you were calling in to try and convince us, or if you just wanted to call in to say, I think this intuitively, and because it's intuitive to me, everyone else should just get it. But not everyone's intuition is the same. My intuition is the opposite. Even though for decades I did believe, I'm just like Brady, I would have called in and said very many of the same things. But I now, those experiences of love, like my baptism, I can still feel my baptism and the love and the support and the warmth that I felt when I came out of that tank. I still feel to this day, but I now no longer ascribe that to the Holy Spirit, right? I ascribe it now to, like, there was dozens of people, the people who I love most were affirming me, and like so I no longer say that love was because of God. I understand that was an interconnection between people who I had a connection with. So Lady Love, we've been chatting for a while. I'm going to give you the last word, but I'm hoping that last word is not a reason why you think it's true, but why Brady and I should think it's true. Go ahead.
You just said that you felt the interconnectedness between people, so you know that there's a force between, i.e. proving my point, because that force between is love, and that force between is God. It's really fine, but I really do hope that you guys learn to experience God again, because I don't know. Atheism is sad to me, or the not belief in God, because, like you said, if I don't believe, first of all, hell is more complicated than that. But the whole point of, I guess, making the world a better place or loving your neighbor as yourself and trying to create a better world, because as long as women are still having children, we could assume that humanity is going to keep going. And the highest evolution is going to be when we come to a point of love and understanding. Like you said, empathy, whatever, if you want, whatever you want to call it, it's still a force that comes from God. Meaning, and me, God being the thing that we can't explain, and the love that binds us, and that interconnectedness that you spoke of yourself that you can feel between human beings. That is what I call love. So if you just want to call it empathy and you don't want to call it God, fine, but it exists outside of you, which is why you can feel it among people. That's
Okay.
just
So
my thing. I know y'all atheists are deep in your, I don't know, not being convinced or not having enough evidence, but you experience God regardless. So I think that it's funny. And
well,
then
we
I
experience
know a lot of
thing that
atheists are
you
still good people. So
we experience things that you want to put the label of God on. So Brady and I actually would be nodding here,
no,
saying we've
I'm not
experienced all
putting
of
the
those same
label
things.
on it.
You are
Humanity
labeling
put
the
the
things
label
that we
on it. If I
experience.
had another word for it, I'd use another word for it. You said I would have the last word.
What is it?
Okay.
There's nothing insufficient about
Have a
using
nice
love.
night.
Good night. Thank you, Lady Love. Yeah. That I mean, if you want to say that the universe is God and the lights are God, like okay, well that's anyway. I actually give you the last word on that because you're more familiar with the color. I don't know if you have a wrap up thoughts.
My wrap up thought would be I think God gets in the way. God gets in the way because I think all of the best attributes of humanity and the worst attributes of humanity, what religion causes us to do is to externalize those things. So when someone does something that we find disturbing, we are quick to demonize them because we don't want to believe that a human could be that bad. So we demonize them. But then on the flip side, when someone does something that is outstanding and is very good, religion also doesn't want to give humanity the credit for that. So we also externalize not just our worst, but our best. So that had to be God that caused us or allowed us to love. And what it does is it short circuits our ability to see this is what humanity is, the best and the worst that we have to offer. That is what a human being is. And if we can get God out of the way, we could deal with humanity as it is. We could love it for what's lovable. We can hate what's detestable. And we can say, this is what we are. And we could deal with the reality of the situation in which we find ourselves. That's all we're asking for. And if God is part of that reality, we're saying, well, then be part of the reality. We'll react to you the same way we react to the best in this person and the worst in that person. But until the God shows up and does something, we have nothing to react to except for what other men have said that God has done, which is putting God in the way. And so that's all I'll say to that.
Hello, and that was, if I had to say, probably the worst clip I have ever seen on the line. Frankly, that was terrible because they say a lot of facts, but we have alternative facts on our side. Now, do remember that if you are seeing me next to some woman who, frankly, not impressed, but if she were to laugh, that would be an endorsement of me, Donald Trump. A laugh is an endorsement, so do not smile or your face will crack. Don't do it. You can't do it. Okay, I really thought she would break by now, so it's kind of ruining the bit I'm trying to do here. But you can like, you can subscribe. Oh, there it is. She endorsed me.